This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. This episode is sponsored by C-School, the online school for creativity training. If you'd like to unleash your creative potential and access a free Creativity Blueprint training series, then just head over to c.school. That's www.c.school for your free training series. In this episode, I speak with Vinh Giang, and we talk about mastering your craft, the art of storytelling, and how to build a speaker business. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor. I'm delighted today to be joined by Vinh Giang. Vinh is a keynote speaker and magician, but first and foremost, an entrepreneur. While in his 20s, he started an online business with two good friends. All of them had decided to leave their careers in accounting and pharmacy to pursue their dream of building a successful business. Their online platform, Encyclopedia of Magic, now teaches magic to almost 50,000 students around the world. For this innovative and successful business idea, Vinh and his friends were awarded Young Entrepreneur of the Year. Today, Vinh is perhaps best known as a keynote speaker, sharing business ideas using the art of magic and some very cool on-stage audience participation. Coming from the humble beginnings of a Vietnamese refugee family, Vinh has now worked with companies from all over the world, including HSBC, Pfizer, and the $1 Million Round Table. It's my great pleasure to have Vinh join us today. So welcome.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it, mate.
So share with everyone what's going on in your world just now. What's been happening?
I just had a boy. Just had a little baby boy. He's 5 months old, and man, it just changes your life. Holy cow! Like you talk about hustling as an entrepreneur. It's like the desire to hustle as a dad is just as strong. So it's beautiful.
And have you now developed that skill of being able to operate on less sleep?
Yes. So yeah, I mean, far out, man. Thank goodness for coffee and Red Bull. I'm pretty sure I'm going to die like in 5 years of heart attack or something. But without that, I don't know how you can cope.
And it was fascinating, like how we kind of connected was, I'm always interested when you hear the same name from multiple different sources, people you trust as well. And you're one of those guys. So I was in Singapore speaking at the start of the year, and there was the gentleman there, Andrew Vine, who has a great speaker bureau there. And he said, oh, you've got to check out what Vin's doing. And then I also spoke with two other people recently who had recently seen you speak at the National Speakers Association convention Influence in Florida as well. So they were all saying, they were all kind of raving about you. It seems like you have come from absolutely nowhere, but I'm guessing this overnight success, this had a lot of years in the works.
Yeah, probably about 10 years in the works. Yeah.
Where did it all begin for you? How did you first kind of, like I mentioned, you're a keynote speaker, you're a magician, entrepreneur. You know, what came first and how did it develop?
Look, the entrepreneur part first, because that's just been a part of my blood and a part of my history. My mum and dad, refugees from Vietnam. So all they did all their life was they never worked for anybody else, really. They just kind of created their own businesses, and, you know, family started with family groceries, pharmacies, restaurants, takeaway stores, the lot. So I kind of grew up around it. So it was a part of my DNA growing up. So to me, the way I got into speaking was after winning that entrepreneurial award, the one of the groups there was like, hey, Vin, can you come do some talks for us? I'm like, what the hell am I going to talk about? And then, man, I just fell in love with it, James, because, you know, you build businesses to build up wealth so that you fill up your bank with money. So you feel good and secure and have options. But then you realize as you kind of do that there's like another bank, which is like the fulfillment bank, which is the one that you do things not because primarily for money, but rather to make you feel good. Excuse me. And what I found was speaking was one of those things for me where I was able to do something that made me feel good inside because I was contributing and I was inspiring people, which felt amazing. So I got addicted to it and then decided to go all in.
And where did the magic bit come in? So you mentioned like you've always had that entrepreneurial kind of DNA there, but where did the love of magic begin?
There's no real fairy tale beautiful story with that, unfortunately. It's just magic is the most fraudulent way to get people's attention. More of that, please. More attention, please. Because as a kid, man, I was just so antisocial and I had no self-confidence. And when I kind of stumbled across magic, I was like, wow, when I do this thing, people go, you're amazing. And then people like me. And I even had a problem where I wasn't even able to hold a conversation with you without doing magic. So it started off really nice, then it turned into this spiral of complete dependency, and then after that I had to kind of come back out of that again and like myself for who I am, not just the magic that I can do.
And one of the things that I did, one of the things that really attracted me initially to what you were doing in your work is you're coming at it from a different perspective. And one of the most obvious ways that you can see that is in terms of your videos that you do and the kind of speaker shows. I mean, most speaker shows are kind of pretty boring and kind of they're dull and everything. Let's kind of be honest about it. And when I first saw one of your videos, I just thought that is fantastic because it's obviously it's you. It's like 100% you that's in there. But it also very beautifully linked up the different parts of your life and who you are and what your message was and how you can help people. You know, that there was the magician part, there was the keynote speaking, but then there was also this very strong director, this kind of this storytelling part, obviously, of you. There's a key part there. So are you feeling like all these parts are starting to come together in your life now?
Yeah, I mean, like to me, being an entrepreneur, I run a video production company as well, James, and being a magician. So it's like kind of being a director, being a speaker, being an entrepreneur, being a magician. All those things, there's one thing that you have in common. You're a storyteller. So what I was doing was, as an entrepreneur, when I'm selling something, because I used to be selling all these other little things that, made me money when I was young, what I realized was that you can't just sell something to somebody by describing to them what you're selling. You have to tell a story behind it, and you're able to captivate people emotionally by telling a story. Same thing with directing when I got into filmmaking. Same thing with magic. You can't just do the sleight of hand because people go, oh, cool trick, bro. Otherwise, when you tell a story behind the magic, that's when people get blown away. So then same thing with becoming a speaker. So all those things kind of came together, and you get that crazy amplifying effect because you've been doing so many things that all compound one another. So, but I didn't do that consciously. That was all kind of unconscious, and bloody grateful it happened.
And one of the things I thought was interesting about you as well, for any of our listeners who are speakers, maybe they're just getting started in the speaking world, or anything which requires performance, getting up there on stage. I heard that last year you were at a big conference, and you were sitting there at the back of the stage, kind of being quiet, doing your thing. And then this year you were on the main stage. You had gone from being on that stage in the space of a year, from no one knowing you, and that's really very few people knowing you in that space, suddenly being the main keynote as well. Talk us through that, because that is something very, very special. Obviously, it takes many, many years to kind of usually progress for that. But I'm guessing that your ability to think about magic, kind of misdirection, how you portray things, how you create a story around you, was part of allowed you to get up on that stage in a very, very quick way.
Look, I think the key thing, it was at the National Speakers Association conference that I went to last year in Phoenix, and I sat in the back, like you said, but then this year I opened the conference. And what got me there was not what I did in the 12 months. It was, like I said to you before, it was what I did in the last 5-10 years, is that one word can sum it all up, and it's mastery. So to me, I think we live in a world now where most people are not patient enough to pursue mastery, whereas magic taught me one thing, and it's that if I spend 300 hours learning this piece of sleight of hand, I know that the barrier of entry is 300 hours, and 99.99% of people won't spend 300 hours to learn one thing.
So basically what people are seeing there is they're just seeing this, you being up on that stage. They're just seeing like that, I'm trying to think, the iceberg that's kind of coming across. They're just seeing that very top of the iceberg of what you've done and what you've achieved, but they don't see all that mastery, all those hundreds and hundreds of hours and thousands of hours that you've put into being able to get up on that stage. Exactly,
James. I've wanted this career path for a very long time. I mean, people have only seen me now, but I've wanted this for a long. I mean, what kind of job out there in the world or career path that you get so well financially rewarded, you get to travel all around the world, and you get to inspire people and add value to their lives. Like, it's unreal. So my desire for it started a long time ago. And it's like the boxer in the ring is only recognized as they're recognized in the ring, but what made them a boxer happened all the years before that, right?
Yeah. But no one sees that. Everyone does it's like when you see those Rocky movies or any of those books, it always does like the fast frame thing. It goes, it's like it gets compressed. No one really wants to see that stuff, really, do they?
the process of building mastery is boring.
Yeah.
It's long, it's repetitive, it takes time. So what's more exciting is just the how did you do it in 12 months? Like that's way more exciting, but it's just not the truth.
So in terms of that mastery, that kind of the daily things that you look to do, or the weekly things that you look to do in order to kind of build up that capacity, build up that mastery, when it comes to your speaking, is there a practice that you have for yourself to ensure that you are continually developing those skills that you require?
Yeah, for sure. There's quite a few things that I do, James. I mean, I think one thing is that I do come from a background of theater, and because of magic, there's a great magician's quote where Robert Houdin said that a magician is an actor playing the part of a magician. And I was like, whew, it's awesome. That means in order to perform greater magic, I need to become a greater actor. So I did a lot of theater. And my theater coach always said to me that if you want to become a speaker, you got to learn how to use your instrument, which is your voice. And Vin, you've never trained your voice. I need you to go see a singing teacher. So I did singing classes for years on end, learned how to maximize the potential of my voice. And then I kept doing theater to maximize the potential of my body, which is an instrument as well.
Yeah.
And I did those two things years on end. And on top of that, to become a successful speaker, you have to understand business, right? Because speaking is a business. So it's like there's so many different things you have to do. One thing is, Steve Martin says, become so good they can't ignore you with your craft. That's one thing you got to do. Then the second thing you got to do is build enough business acumen to learn how to run a successful speaking business. Because a lot of us tend, and me too, including when I first started, I ran my speaking business like a hobby, not really a business.
That part you mentioned there about the voice training, the theater training as well. I'm wondering now that you're moving up a gear in terms of being out on the road more, or maybe you're speaking more, you're speaking on bigger stages more. Are you finding that training, that bedrock, is really starting to kick in? 'Cause I know some people who maybe authors, for example, who previously been spending a lot of time just kind of writing their stuff, and then they suddenly have to go on the promo tour, or musicians. I worked a lot with kind of Grammy award-winning music artists, and many of them, if they're not kind of looking after themselves all the time, when they have to go on that big, 12-month or 18-month tour to promote that album, their voice goes by week 2 or something. So are you finding some of those practices that you've had that's enabled you to kind of keep performing at a very high level consistently?
Yeah, definitely. And one more thing it allows you to do, which is really cool, is that it helps you do things that look really hard. It makes it look really elegant, and you're doing it with ease, which is amazing. Yeah. Like that's what I realized. People go, wow, and it's funny because that's what confuses people and makes people think it's just a given talent.
Yes,
it's no skill, and it's like, wow, but that's what my theater coaches and my vocal coaches told me, is that all this foundation, all these years of training that you're putting in, all this money you're paying me, because I did pay them a lot of money, and then it's like, it's going to end up in you being able to do this so effortlessly that people assume that you were born with it.
Yeah. It's interesting, as you mentioned something that when you get to that kind of level of mastery on anything, I'm reminded of the other day, someone was telling me a story about a very, very good production manager for big festivals, big music festivals. And this festival brought him in one year to come and to run their festival. And so he basically, when the festival was actually happening itself in those 3 days, he was basically just kind of sitting back. He was just kind of sitting in his office. Occasionally people would come up to him, ask him questions and do things. And it looked like he was doing absolutely nothing. And as a result, the festival went really well. It was best festival, really, really smoothly. And at the end of it, this festival committee said, we need to get rid of that production manager because he just didn't do anything. The whole weekend, he just kind of sat on his backside the whole weekend. And they got rid of him. And obviously, what happens the next year is like a complete disaster because he made it look so effortless in what he was doing. He had such mastery because he'd done all the work beforehand. And when it came to the event itself, he could just go with the flow and enjoy it and create an atmosphere around him that everyone could perform at their best.
Hell yeah, that's so true. I can totally relate to that.
So you're going up on stages all the time. You speak about communication skills, obviously, and there's other areas that you kind of cover. Where do you go to kind of generate those ideas for your keynotes and for the speeches that you're going to give? Where do you go for inspiration, and how do you then begin starting to develop those ideas?
Look, for me, it's just, I think one of the biggest golden rules in speaking is only talk about things you give a shit about. And I think that's that's really important to kind of learn. It's what my theater coach always said. He just goes, don't go on stage and talk about things you don't care about. So it's really about me going in and thinking and just kind of really spending that time to go, well, what do I really care about? What are the key messages that I genuinely care about? Because the thing with keynote speaking is that a lot of the times you might have 1 or 3 keynotes at most, and you're doing these keynotes over and over again. But they obviously they transform, they evolve, and you polish them and they get better. But the general message is a lot of the times the same. So if you don't care about what you're talking about, you're going to hate this industry.
Yeah.
You get bored of it really quickly. So I spend a lot of time working out.
So you have to kind of then go, I suppose, into yourself in that way as well, when maybe there's things flashing past your view all the time and like, oh, this could be interesting. You have to kind of maybe go a quieter place to find that thing that you actually really give a shit about.
Well, it's funny because it's really just me finding my own truths. Like I have this fundamental belief, right, that so up until I was about 20, I kept making a lot of stupid decisions, and I go, why am I making such stupid decisions? And then a bit of an aha moment, a moment of insight for me was when I realized, I'm making these dumbass decisions because I'm making these decisions with the knowledge bank of my own Neanderthal experience, which is not very much. So then I was like, well, why don't I look for all the common truths that exist in the world that have been true for the last 1,000 years? And I just literally Googled common truths, and I started to find all these wonderful common truths that have been true for the last 1,000 years. And then I started making my decisions based on a lot of other years of intelligence and experience. And all of a sudden my life started getting a lot better because my decisions weren't based on, I guess, what's his name? I think it was Isaac Newton said that you stand on the shoulders of giants. And that kind of helped me a lot. But then I had to kind of find out, well, out of all these truths that I've learned, which ones are mine? Which one do I relate to the most? Which ones do I connect with the most? Because those are the ones I should be talking about.
So, and that reminds me a little bit, I think it was Elon Musk was talking, he said always kind of going back to first principles, or Charlie Munger, the great investor with Warren Buffett as well, was always, he had this, I think there's a wonderful book, which is kind of what you talked about, those common truths or those key principles. He says if you start from there, it's pretty difficult to screw it up because you've got a basis there from which to work.
What's that book called, James?
Charlie Munger. It's the sayings of something of Charlie Munger, and it's a big book. It's a big, and it's very difficult to get a hold of. It's you've got to get this. I'll share the link on the show notes as well, so people can check this out as well. But I'm guessing you mentioned those missteps in your career as well. Can you tell us about a time when you worked on something? You worked on maybe a project or a new thing, and you gave your heart and your soul, but it just didn't work out like you'd hoped. And what were the lessons that you took from that experience?
Yeah, dude, my mid-20s, starting that online business, like I was in debt $500,000. I was like, man, I was depressed. Yeah, it sucked because, again, I think the message in entrepreneurship is like, anyone can do it. It's amazing. And then you get into it and you realize how crap it is because, you're all by yourself all the time. You're working all the time. You're doing stuff you're bad at. You're doing stuff you're weak at. So there were a whole bunch of things I had to learn. But the core thing that got me out of debt and helped me get out of debt within about 4 years was understanding that the amount of wealth I can generate is directly proportional to the amount of value I add to people. So I just kept thinking to myself, I'm always going to make 50 grand a year. It's going to take me, at least 30 years to pay off this debt. But the biggest lesson I learned was that, no, hang on. I make 50 grand a year because the amount of value I add is only equivalent to $50,000 a year. I can make $100,000 a year. I can make $250,000 a year. I can make more than that, but I just have to be able to add that much value. So then that got me onto a whole new train of thought, which allowed me to create different areas of value that people were willing to reinvest me a lot of money for. So again, that was just life-changing. Like when I fully understood that, not kind of surface level going, yeah. But when you fully understand that, it was life-changing.
Absolutely. And when you kind of made that, okay, that was obviously a key kind of distinction that you made about what you want to, what you needed to do to kind of take that next step up. Were there any other kind of, as you were kind of going through this journey, this life journey, as an entrepreneur, as a magician, as a speaker, as someone that wanted to kind of had a message they wanted to communicate into the world, was there a key insight or a light bulb moment or an aha moment? You went, oh, okay, this is the direction I want to be going in. This is a key thing I want to be telling.
Yeah, look, I think another big aha moment for me was that, like, let's say, for example, when I wanted to do speaking, I realized that I could do anything I really wanted to do, because when I wanted to do speaking, for example, I went onto Amazon and I ordered the top 30 books where people wrote about how to build a speaking business. And I even read memoirs about people's lives who were speakers. I literally purchased 30, got them home. I studied the 30 books in the 6 months ahead, like it was a university course that I was about to sit an exam for. I blueprinted the industry. I understood what was going on. And I didn't jump out there because I remember at the time I did a $25,000 course with a guy that was going to teach me how to build a speaking business, and only to realize he doesn't speak and make as much money as he says he makes. So I burnt a lot of money away as well. Yeah. But then those 30 books, which cost me in total about $250, taught me how to build a speaking career. Yeah. Same thing. You want better leads? Go to Amazon. It's all in books. Just read. To me, reading, you've got to learn. Like, a lot of people now want the information handed to them. And I think we've got to go back to the basics, isn't it? That anything you want to do in your life, there's someone who's done it. There's many people who have done it, and they've written great books about it. So
ingesting those 30 books, the ideas from these 30 speakers or speaker trainers or folks who run speaker bureaus, you mentioned kind of going back to basics. What are for someone that's maybe just getting started, or maybe they're a professional and they have a message that they want to share in the world. I mean, what are the 2 or 3 things, like if you the absolute kind of fundamentals that they have to get right, they have to develop mastery of?
Three things, I think. The first thing that's really important is you have to understand that when you're on stage, most people understand this is very common, is that you've got to educate. Everyone gets that. Most speakers are educators. But the second thing you've got to do that not a lot of people think about is you've got to inspire. And inspiration comes from 2 places. Inspiration comes from your own story. So people always ask the question, how do I become a better storyteller? You have to live a more interesting life. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is inspiration comes from how you sound. So when you think about it, I can play a sad piano song, you feel sad, right? And then I can play an inspiring piano song, you feel inspired. There's no words to it. It's all emotion driven, which is led by the notes. So then again, you've got to learn your voice. So when you can educate, when you can inspire, and when you can do the last thing, when you can entertain, when you do those 3 things, and this is alluding to Steve Jobs' kind of principles, when you do those 3 things, you will captivate an audience in a way that most people don't. So I think those are the 3 things you have to understand, which then again, those things will branch out to the bigger things. Educating means you have to know your content. Got to know what you're speaking about. Inspiring means you have to find all the stories in your life that is inspiring, because again, you do have to live out those stories best you can. And then to me, entertaining. One of the best things I did was I wrote my talk, and I hired comedians to help write some of my lines and help me uncover the humor in my talk, which was amazing. And it was such an incredible experience. And until this day, like I still don't try to do all of that myself. I get singing teachers to help me. I get coaches to help me write. I get comedians to help me funny up my talk. Again, at least like Henry Ford, right? You don't have to know everything. You just ask the right people for the things that you need.
So when it comes to that, that educate, entertain, inspire. So that's when, like, obviously you up on stage. Are there any of those elements though that also relate to, if you can flip it around the other side, working with the clients, the business part, let's say, of a speaker's business? Is there any things that you can kind of take into that and weave into the business side?
I've worked really hard to be able to build my speaking business here in the US, and I've just had such a privilege of being able to meet so many of the bureau owners, and I always ask them the same thing. I always go, hey, and speaker bureaus are amazing, because once you get in with a speaker bureau, you build a good relationship. Key thing here, you can't just be on their site, you have to build a good relationship with them. They always said to me 2 things. Be so good that I can't ignore you on the marketplace. Be so good that you beat my current speakers on the marketplace. So that's how I want to hear about you. Don't reach out to me. Don't send me your book. Don't send me, like, it's hilarious. They get so frustrated by because I did this as well. They're like, please just don't give me, just don't. I have to change my phone number all the time. They say to me, just beat my speakers that I'm currently selling, and then I want the conferences to say to me, no, sorry, we don't want your speaker. We booked this guy named Vin, or we booked this guy named James Taylor, for example. So they said that's the first thing. Get really good at what you do. Just get really good at it. Spend years getting good at it before you come to us. Then the second part they say is, just don't be a jerk. Be really awesome to work with. So it's hilarious. Like, that's the two things, and I kept getting that advice, and I was like, oh, I want better advice. But what I realize now is that that's just the truth.
Yeah.
It's just what I didn't want to hear at the time, because I wish that there was a shortcut. I wish that there was a silver bullet. I wish that there was something else I could do. But those are the two things that matter. You'd be really good at what you do, and you'd be really awesome to work with, and you have a wonderful speaking career.
So, Vin, I believe you've got a new podcast that's going to be is hitting the airwaves, or has hit the airwaves already. So what was the idea behind the podcast? Why did you create the podcast?
Oh, look, I haven't even created it yet. For me, I'm just kind of doing them live stream on Facebook right now, because, again, I realized that before I get into podcasts, I have to really master that craft as well. So, like, right now, what I'm trying to learn is the art of conversation, the art of listening. I'm bringing random people on, and I'm learning how to listen and how to dive deeper into what the person's saying, because like I listen to a lot of podcasts myself, and what I find is that it's like, I don't want to do podcasts every week because I have to do the podcast every week. I don't want to get into that pattern of, I just don't want to be in that pattern. I want to become a great conversationalist. And a huge part of that is learning how to listen. So that's why initially when I did it by myself, I was like, oh crap, I'm not learning how to listen. I'm just learning how to talk. I can do that already. I need to learn how to listen better. And then when someone says something, how to dive deeper, make them feel comfortable enough to talk about something that isn't often talked about. So we can get deeper and not talk about surface level stuff, but go deeper as well. So still trying to master that craft. So no podcast as of yet, unfortunately. I'm still learning.
So one of the joys of podcasting, both being on podcasts and running podcasts as well, is that going deeper and asking that kind of those kind of follow-up questions. Have there ever been times when you've been interviewed for things, or even actually when you do keynotes, sometimes you'll have Q&A sections at the end. Has there ever been a question which has just left you either completely flummoxed, or it's just made you had to really kind of stop and rethink what you were doing and really kind of go deep there?
That actually happens all the time. I think that's the beauty of conversation, is that, and then the reason I call it down the rabbit hole is because you don't know where things lead. And what I love about that is it's exploring your own mind and pushing your knowledge to the extremities, right? So that happens to me all the time, James. Like, one thing is that I've always believed that passion is something that is a byproduct that comes from mastery. And then I recently learned, someone put their hand up and says, Vin, I understand what you're saying, that the only way to be passionate about something is to master something. But Vin, I'm going to tell you about the story of Andre Agassi. He mastered the craft of tennis and hated it. And I was like, oh, what? And then that just, for a moment, that destroyed my brain. And I had like a stage freeze, and I was like, wait, what? Huh? And it was so crazy, because trying to keep my mind open to allow that new piece of knowledge to come in, to then force me to explore how I can use that new piece of knowledge to adjust my worldviews was just it hurt my head so hard. I love moments like that, because that's what growth feels like.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned Andre Agassi as well, because obviously in the world that you do with in magic, there's kind of misdirection there as times, but there's also like tells and things that happen within poker and other stuff. And I was suddenly reminded, as you mentioned the Andre Agassi one there, Agassi always used to play, and I can't remember the other player that he always used to play, and he would beat him all the time. And this other player was like, how is he beating me all the time? How is this? What is going on here? He got some sixth sense or something. And it was only after Agassi retired that he actually let on to what his trick was. It wasn't a trick. It was actually mastery, because he really developed those skills, being able to read people and see people that way. This opponent he had a tiny little tell when he was playing, which he would put his tongue out, and he just touched the part of his mouth, like maybe to the left or the right of his mouth, and in his cheek, where he was going to be firing his volley. He was going to be hitting. So Agassi always knew. So I always knew he was going to hit the top left or wherever it was going to be. So these little acts of, but that, as you say, that comes from, a deep level of mastery, being able to, having done all those hours that you have to kind of build upon.
Yeah, you're absolutely. You'll be blind to those things if you don't know your craft as well as you should.
So you've got maybe a podcast happening. Who knows? We're going to be following on Facebook and everything as well in the meantime. But do you have any other kind of online resources or tools or apps that you love using, especially when you're maybe traveling? Because I know you haven't spent a lot of time on planes at the moment.
Yeah. Look, one of the best free apps. We pay for it now because we use it for our production company. But it's called Asana. I'm sure your listeners and you have heard of it. It's just an incredible project management tool that, since I started using that for my own life, it's just changed my life. Like I never realized I had about 35 projects going on in my life, and like I write things down, like being a dad is a project, being a husband is a project. So just kind of understand I compartmentalize all these things. And I never realized how poorly I was doing at the majority of my projects. The only project that I was doing well was my video production business, my speaking business, and my communication workshop business. And I was like, oh crap, like. Because that's the thing. We work and then we come home. But then when we come home, we switch off. So you're not working when you're home and you're switching off. And I realized that, wow, no wonder I'm not achieving those goals that I want in my relationship with my family, my friends, my mom and my dad, my wife, my son. So I realized that one tool helped me see the things that I was blind to before. Because those were the things I was taking for granted.
And you mentioned books earlier. You were talking about these 30 books that really gave you an insight. It was your MBA in professional speaking as well. If you could recommend just one book to our listeners, and it could be on speaking or it could be on something else, what would it be? And also, if you could recommend one piece of music. I know you obviously have a strong thing with music. Having watched your videos as well, I can tell that there's a sense of timing there as well. So what would that book and what would that record be?
Look, the biggest thing I'd recommend for speakers specifically is a non-speaker book. I'd recommend the book E-Myth, E-M-Y-T-H, because like speakers, like magicians, I mentor a lot of magicians as well, and I say that, look, you need to build on your entrepreneurial ability to manage a team. Speaking is a business, and you need a team to build that business. Most speakers don't succeed because they try to do it all themselves. I don't try to do any of it myself. Even when I started, I don't try to do my website myself. I don't try to do my videos myself. I just don't. So I think the biggest thing is E-Myth, and it will start to. I think a lot of people, as they read that, they'll be able to connect with what that book is saying.
It's a great book.
Yeah, it's a great book, and the song would definitely be Frank Sinatra, "My Way."
So let's imagine you wake up tomorrow morning, and you have to start from scratch. So you have all the tools of your trade, all the knowledge you've acquired, all that level of mastery that you've developed over the years, but no one, no one knows you. You have to restart. What would you do? How would you restart?
I think the first thing that I would do is one of the messages that I speak about a lot, which is it's originally a quote by Jim Rohn, and it's that you are the direct reflection of the top 5 people you spend time with. So I would try to find the right people to spend time with. And I would find the right people to build relationships with, because every time I forget this lesson, it just punches me in the mouth again. And it's that my success right now is predicated on the relationships with the people that I have. And it's like with the bureaus. I'm not just hey, I'm on your website. No, I invite the agents with their wife and their children to my home in LA to have dinner. And it's like, I learned that lesson from one of my great mentors in Australia, Matthew Mihilovich, who has a great book, by the way. It's called Life in Half a Second. Check it out. But he, like, when I spent time with him, he always invited the CEOs of companies with their partners and their children over to his house to eat dinner. And he would always invite me too. And I watched him work, and I'm like, wow, you're amazing. And because he said, then people do business with people they like. Yeah. And my first step is not even to tell you about what I do. I want you to like me. I want us to hang out. I want us to have a good time. And it's just business 101. So I think I'd be cooking a lot, I reckon.
That's some fantastic advice as well. Vin, where should people go if they want to learn more about, I know you have a communication skills workshop that you have going, you have your keynote speaking as well. Where should people go to find out more about that?
Look, I'm the most active on my Facebook page. So just jump onto facebook.com/askvin, VINH, and you'll find me there.
Well, Vin, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. I was really looking forward to speaking because, as I say, when you hear from multiple sources you trust, that this is someone you've got to check out, and it was just great connecting. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you up on stage at some point really soon.
No worries, my friend. Take care. Great chatting to you, James.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.